The storm slammed against the window, glass rattling like it would shatter any second. Her breath caught as she turned. He was standing there, drenched, wild-eyed, blood dripping from his knuckles. "Don't open that door, Clara," he whispered, voice breaking. "It's not me you should be afraid of. It's him, he's here." For the first time, she saw it. The shadow moving in her hallway, the one that had been haunting her nights for weeks. And suddenly, her neighbor wasn't the danger, he was the shield. If you're already hooked, stay with me. This story only gets darker. Welcome to MG's Love Stories, where passions burn, hearts break, and you can't stop watching. Don't just listen. Feel it. Like this story? Share, subscribe, and let's dive in. The first time Clara noticed him, it was a Tuesday night, sometime after midnight. She had stayed up late again. Another habit she promised herself she'd break. Sleep had become slippery lately, impossible to hold on to. She was rinsing her coffee cup in the dim light of her kitchen. The city stretched out around her in silence. From her little third-floor apartment, the world felt like a cage of concrete and glass. She liked it that way, secluded, anonymous. A place where nobody really knew her, and she didn't have to know anybody else. The kitchen window above the sink faced the next building, a narrow alley separating the 2 blocks. Most of the time, those windows were dark, empty squares. But that night, one of them wasn't. One glowing rectangle directly across from her. And in that square of light, him, her neighbor, tall, still, a silhouette etched in gold from the lamp behind him. She couldn't see his face clearly, but she could feel it, the way his gaze locked onto her like an invisible thread stretched across the night. She froze, coffee cup halfway to the sink, suds slipping down her wrist. Was he looking at her? For a long moment, neither of them moved. Clara's breath hitched, pressing shallow in her chest. The world outside was silent. No cars, no wind, just the hum of her refrigerator and the pounding of her heart. It wasn't like someone catching you by accident in a passing glance. No, this was deliberate, intentional, a gaze that waited. She broke first. Flicking the faucet off, she pulled the curtain shut with a snap, as though fabric could erase what just happened. That night, she didn't sleep. She told herself she was being paranoid. People looked. Maybe he wasn't even watching her at all. Maybe he was staring past her, lost in thought. It wasn't illegal to stand in your own apartment. But still, every time she closed her eyes, she saw that square of light and him still watching. The next night, Clara avoided the kitchen window completely. She ate dinner in the living room, washed her plate in the bathroom sink. But avoidance has a way of making curiosity louder. By the 3rd night, she gave in. Just one peek, she told herself. Just to prove he's not there. She pulled the curtain back an inch. Her heart stuttered. There he was. The same time, the same window, the same stillness. Watching, Clara slammed the curtain shut, pressing her back against the wall. "What the hell?" she whispered into the empty room. It became impossible to ignore. Every night, the same routine. Midnight, she'd approach the window, pulse racing, stomach knotted with both dread and an inexplicable pull. And every night, his window would be lit, his shadow waiting. She began to study him from that sliver of space between curtain and wall. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his posture unnervingly still, but not rigid, like someone waiting for something. His face was always dim, partly hidden, but she could sense his eyes on her, heavy, unblinking. Who was he? Why her? Should she confront him? Call the landlord? The police? But something about it didn't feel like danger. Not exactly. It was strange, unnerving, but not threatening. Not yet. The weirdest part was that she felt seen, as though, for the first time in months, someone noticed her in this endless city of strangers. And against her better judgment, that did something to her chest. A flicker, not of fear but of intrigue. Clara's life was simple. Work at the bookstore from 9 to 5, dinner for 1. A few friends she texted but rarely saw. Her mother called sometimes, mostly to remind her that she was 30 and single. Her words dipped in gentle concern that stung anyway. Most nights were a blur of Netflix and scrolling until her brain was too numb to keep her eyes open. Loneliness had a way of blurring days together. But now there was this quiet, unnerving ritual at the window. It gave her nights a pulse. She hated it. She wanted it. The first time she tried to ignore it completely, she failed. She sat on her couch with a book, eyes dragging over the same paragraph again and again. But her focus was a taut thread stretched to the kitchen. By midnight, she gave in. She padded across the room, barefoot on cold tiles, and opened the curtain. Her stomach dropped. He wasn't there. The window was dark. Her chest tightened unexpectedly, as if something had been stolen from her. She stood there for several minutes, staring into the black square, feeling both foolish and oddly disappointed. But then light. His lamp flicked on. His figure stepped into view, tall, shadowed. And this time, she swore she saw his lips curve. A smile. Clara staggered back from the window, heart hammering. This was insane. She didn't know this man. He didn't know her. This was how horror stories began. And yet, that night, she dreamed of standing in the kitchen again. Only this time, she opened her window, and he opened his. And somehow, the distance between the buildings disappeared, leaving nothing but air and the heat of his breath close against her cheek. She woke shaking, her sheets tangled around her. Days bled into nights, and Clara's obsession deepened. She found herself timing her evening routine to midnight. Her stomach would churn in anticipation as the clock neared 12. Her hands restless, her heart already bracing for his presence. It became their unspoken ritual, her kitchen, his lamp. But the silence between them began to feel unbearable. She needed to break it, to prove this wasn't all in her head, to make contact. One night, just past midnight, she drew a slow breath, tugged the curtain aside, and found him waiting. Of course he was waiting. And before she could second-guess herself, she raised her hand. A small wave, hesitant, almost trembling. For a moment he didn't move. The weight of his stillness crushed her, made her feel stupid, exposed. But then he raised his hand too, a mirror of hers. Her chest seized, heat blooming across her skin. It was the smallest gesture, nothing more than two strangers acknowledging each other across glass and distance. But to Clara, it felt like lightning had split the night in two. She let the curtain fall shut, back pressed against the wall, her breath ragged in her throat. And for the first time since this began, she smiled. The next night, she waves again. This time, he doesn't just wave back. He writes something on a piece of paper and presses it to the glass. A single word scrawled in dark ink. Careful. The word lingered in her mind long after she shut the curtain. Careful. Not hello. Not his name. Not anything that could make sense of their strange ritual. Just a warning. Her pulse rattled against her ribs, torn between disbelief and something she refused to call fear. Who was he to warn her? Careful of what? Of him? Of herself? Of something else she couldn't see? Clara barely slept that night. Every sound outside her apartment seemed louder, closer. The pipes knocking, the elevator groaning, the occasional shuffle in the hallway. By dawn, she had convinced herself she imagined it. Maybe it hadn't said careful at all. Maybe it was a trick of the light, a pattern on the paper her tired eyes misread. But when midnight came again, and she pulled the curtain aside, he was there. And so was the paper. The word pressed clearly against the glass in thick, deliberate strokes. Careful. Her stomach dipped. This was no hallucination. Clara stared at the note, her thoughts spinning. She considered ignoring it, retreating back into the safety of denial. But something in his expression, though shadowed, almost hidden, urged her forward. She rummaged for a marker, found a red one in her drawer, and grabbed a notepad. Her hand trembled as she scrawled her own word. Why? She held it up to the window, heart hammering as if the paper itself were a confession. Across the alley, he hesitated. Then, slowly, he scribbled again. His paper rose. Not safe. Her throat tightened. Not safe. Did he mean himself? The building? Her? She scribbled back quickly, pressing hard enough to nearly tear the paper. Explain. He didn't move for a long moment. She thought he might turn away, might leave her in the crushing silence of unanswered questions. But then his marker touched paper again, and he pressed it to the glass. Later, Clara felt a strange mixture of frustration and relief. He was warning her, but not enough to make sense of it. She slammed the curtain shut. The next day, Clara couldn't focus. At the bookstore, customers' voices blurred into static. She dropped change, forgot to bag purchases, answered questions with absent nods. Her coworker, Denise, gave her a pointed look. "You okay, Clara? You look spooked." "I'm fine," Clara said too quickly. Denise smirked. "Fine, sure. That's what all the main characters say before they get murdered in horror movies." Clara forced a laugh, but the word murdered clung to her skin like static. All day, her thoughts circled back to that note. Careful. Not safe. Later. Later when? Later how? By the time midnight arrived, she was trembling with equal parts dread and anticipation. She parted the curtain, expecting him there, and he was. But this time, there was no note. Instead, he tapped his fingers lightly on the glass, then pointed down. Clara frowned. She leaned closer, following the direction of his gesture. Her gaze drifted to the alleyway below. For a moment, she saw nothing but shadows stretching between the two buildings. But then, movement. A figure. Someone standing directly below her window, hidden in the shadows of the alley. Her breath caught in her throat. The figure was hard to make out, but it was there, motionless, waiting. Clara stumbled back from the window, heart pounding so violently she thought her chest would break open. What the hell was going on? She pressed her back against the wall, breathing shallow, listening to the hum of the city beyond. When she dared peek again, the figure was gone, and her neighbor's lamp had gone dark. Sleep became impossible. Every creak of her apartment turned her blood cold. She double-checked the locks 3 times, shoved a chair under the doorknob, and curled up on the couch instead of her bed. When dawn came, her exhaustion felt like an anchor tied to her bones. But with daylight came a fragile sense of safety, as if the shadows retreated under the sun's scrutiny. She tried to tell herself it was paranoia, that the figure had been a trick of her tired mind. But deep down, she knew better. And worse, she found herself waiting for midnight again. The following night, she almost didn't look. Almost. But midnight came, and her curiosity dragged her like a chain to the window. Her neighbor was there, waiting. This time, he held a note already pressed to the glass. Saw him again. Her blood iced. She scribbled furiously. Who? His answer came slower this time, as though he were choosing the words carefully. Man watching you. Clara's mouth went dry. Watching her? The figure in the alley hadn't been random. It wasn't just someone passing by. The realization settled like lead in her stomach. Someone was watching her. And her neighbor wasn't the threat, he was the lookout. Her marker squeaked against the paper. Why? Who is he? His reply came, Don't know. Dangerous. Clara's pulse throbbed in her ears. She pressed her forehead to the cold glass, struggling to breathe. What did this mean? Should she call the police? But what could she tell them? That her mysterious neighbor claimed someone was watching her. She'd sound unhinged. She looked up again. Her neighbor had written something new. Trust me. Her stomach flipped. She dropped her notepad, backing away from the window as if the words themselves burned. Trust him? She didn't even know his name. And yet, hadn't he been right? She had seen someone in the alley. Clara pulled the curtain shut, sinking onto the couch, hands trembling. Was she in danger? Or was she just being pulled into some stranger's twisted game? The next day at the bookstore, Clara kept glancing over her shoulder. Each creak of the door made her flinch. She noticed people she'd never paid attention to before. Men loitering by the magazine rack, someone lingering too long in the fiction aisle. Were they harmless customers, or the watcher her neighbor warned her about? On her break, she Googled, signs you're being watched. The answers didn't help. They only deepened her paranoia. That night, she almost didn't open the curtain. But the itch in her chest won. Her neighbor was there again. This time, he didn't have a note. He simply raised his hand, palm open against the glass. An invitation, a reassurance. Clara hesitated, then lifted her hand too. Palm to palm, separated by distance and glass, but somehow together. And for a moment the fear loosened, until movement flickered at the corner of her eye. Down in the alley, someone was standing there again. This time closer, this time looking up, directly at her. Clara gasped, stumbling backward so quickly her notebook clattered to the floor. When she dared look again, the figure was gone. But her neighbor wasn't, and he was writing again. His note pressed against the glass. The words shook her to her core. He's getting bolder. The next night, instead of notes, Clara finds something else waiting at her door. A folded piece of paper slid under the frame. The handwriting is messy, unfamiliar, and it contains only one chilling line. I see you too. The note lay on the floor just inside her door. A plain sheet of paper, folded once down the middle, slid neatly beneath the crack like a whisper. Clara stared at it from the couch, stomach clenched. She hadn't heard footsteps. No knock, no sound at all. Yet there it was, waiting. Her hands shook as she picked it up, the paper rough under her fingertips. She unfolded it slowly, heart drumming in her throat. The handwriting was messy, rushed, unfamiliar. I see you too. Clara's breath hitched. The words blurred for a moment as panic surged in her chest. Her neighbor's warnings hadn't been paranoia. The figure in the alley wasn't her imagination. Someone was watching her. Someone close enough to slip notes under her door. She dropped the paper as if it were burning, staggering back until she hit the wall. What now? Police? A friend? No, what would she say? Hi, there's a stranger leaving creepy notes at my door, but I don't know who he is, or why, or if I'm just losing my mind. Would they believe her, or chalk it up to loneliness, anxiety, paranoia? She couldn't breathe. Her only thought, the window. She rushed to the kitchen, yanking the curtain aside. He was there, her neighbor, waiting. When he saw her face, pale, trembling, his expression changed. His hand disappeared for a moment, then came back holding his marker and pad. He scribbled quickly, then pressed the paper to the glass. What happened? Clara fumbled with her own marker, her letters jagged and desperate. Note under my door. I see you too. His jaw tightened visibly, the muscles sharp in the lamplight. He scribbled again, movements sharp, urgent. Don't open door. Ever. Lock. Call police. Clara's chest caved. Police. She should. She knew she should. But what if they brushed her off? What if the stalker knew she had called and grew bolder? Her marker squeaked furiously against the page. Scared. Don't know what to do. He held her gaze for a long moment. Then he wrote again. Trust me. Tonight. Don't sleep near door. Her throat tightened. She wanted to ask why. How do you know? But the words stuck. Instead, she nodded faintly, more to herself than to him. That night, she dragged a blanket to the couch, staying as far from the front door as possible. Every sound in the building felt magnified. The hum of pipes, the occasional creak, the elevator shuddering to life. At one point, she swore she heard footsteps in the hallway outside. Slow, pausing, then silence. She pressed her hand over her mouth, every muscle taut, until finally the sounds faded. When she dared peek through the curtain, her neighbor was still there, his lamp on, his frame steady, watching, guarding, and for the first time, Clara felt safer with him there than alone. The next morning, sunlight streamed weakly through her blinds, but exhaustion clung to her like wet clothes. She found the note still lying on the floor, its words stark in daylight. I see you too. She shoved it into a drawer, as if hiding it could make it less real. But it wasn't less real. It was escalating. That evening at the bookstore, Clara startled when Denise clapped her shoulder. Jumpy much? Denise frowned. Seriously, what's going on with you? Clara hesitated, then lowered her voice. Someone's been watching me. Denise blinked. Watching you? I think so. My neighbor warned me, and then I found this note. She cut herself off, realizing how crazy it sounded. Her coworker tilted her head, skeptical. And you believe him? This neighbor guy? You don't even know him. What if he's the one messing with you? The words sank like stones in Clara's chest. She hadn't considered that, or maybe she had, but shoved it down because the alternative was worse. Could her neighbor be orchestrating this? Playing both sides? The thought curdled in her stomach. That night, she sat by the curtain long before midnight, torn between fear and trust. When the lamp flicked on across the alley, relief washed through her despite herself. Her neighbor lifted a note. Okay. She hesitated, then raised her own. Scared. Don't know if I can trust you. He froze. Even at a distance, she could see the way his body tensed, the way his head tilted slightly as if the words stung. Then he scribbled, slower this time. Understand, but I'm not enemy. Clara bit her lip, marker trembling in her grip. She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to, because if he wasn't her ally, then she had no one. But before she could write back, something happened that made her blood run cold. Movement. Not in the alley this time, in her apartment. A shadow, quick, darting across her living room wall. Clara spun, heart lodging in her throat. Her apartment was supposed to be empty. The door was locked, but she swore. She saw someone move. She staggered back to the window, frantic, scrawling one desperate word. Help! Across the way, her neighbor jolted upright. He vanished from the window for a moment. Her pulse roared. What was he doing? Leaving? Coming? Seconds later, she heard it. The slam of a door in the alley below. She darted to the glass. Through the faint glow of a streetlight, she saw him, her neighbor, rushing out of his building, head snapping toward hers. He was coming for her. Her entire body shook. Was he racing to save her? Or was this the moment he revealed himself as the danger all along? She stumbled toward her front door, debating whether to unlock it or barricade it further. But before she could decide, a faint creak sounded from her bedroom. Someone was inside. She froze, every nerve ablaze. Her neighbor pounded up the stairwell. She heard the echo of his footsteps climbing, closer, and then silence. The bedroom door clicked, opening. Clara grabbed the nearest thing she could, an umbrella from the coat stand, holding it like a weapon. Her breath came in shallow gasps. The front door handle rattled violently, making her yelp. Clara! A voice hissed. It's me. Open up. Her neighbor's voice, low, urgent. But behind her, the sound of a footstep in the bedroom. Someone was inside, trapped between two unknowns. Her neighbor at the door, the intruder in her home. Clara's heart threatened to explode. The umbrella trembled in her grip. She had seconds to choose. Open the door to the neighbor she barely trusted, or face the intruder lurking in the shadows of her apartment. Would you stay in love if you discovered a secret like this? Tell me in the comments while we continue. The umbrella trembled in Clara's hands. Her pulse thundered so violently she thought her ribs might crack. The door rattled again, louder this time. Her neighbor's voice, hushed but urgent, cut through the air. Clara, it's me. Let me in. You're not safe. Every instinct screamed at her to move, but her body was frozen. Behind her, the sound again, deliberate, measured. A footstep across the creaky floorboards of her bedroom. Then another. The blood drained from her face. She wasn't imagining it. Someone was inside her apartment. Clara, open the door now. Her neighbor's voice had an edge of desperation. But what if Denise was right? What if he was the one behind all this, the notes, the calls, the shadows? What if she opened the door and walked straight into the arms of the real predator? Her knuckles whitened on the umbrella shaft. She spun halfway toward the bedroom, heart racing, trying to calculate. If she stayed inside, she'd face the intruder alone. If she opened the door, she might be inviting in something worse. Seconds. I only have seconds. The bedroom door creaked again. An unmistakable hinge whine. Whoever was inside was no longer hiding. Her neighbor's voice broke the air, louder now, as though his restraint was crumbling. Clara, please. The word please was what did it. Not the demand, not the urgency, but the raw plea in his voice. Something in her chest cracked. She lunged for the door, fumbling the locks with trembling fingers. The chain scraped against the wood, the bolt slid free, and she yanked the handle down. The door flew open. Her neighbor stood there, chest heaving, sweat dampening his hairline. His eyes locked on hers immediately, scanning her face, reading her terror. "Inside," he said. "Now." Before she could answer, he shoved past her, pulling the door closed behind him. The movement was swift, practiced, as if he'd done this 100 times before. Clara stumbled back, umbrella still clutched like a talisman. She stared at him wide-eyed, but before she could speak, a sound from the bedroom. Both their heads snapped toward it. Her neighbor didn't hesitate. He moved down the hallway with surprising speed, his frame tense, every motion sharp. Clara's breath caught as she followed a few paces behind, torn between relief and fresh terror. He stopped just short of the bedroom door, his hand raised to silence her. His posture was rigid, coiled. The silence stretched. Then another footstep. A shadow shifted against the crack of light spilling under the bedroom door. Clara's throat tightened. She raised the umbrella higher, though it felt laughably inadequate compared to whatever danger lurked beyond. Her neighbor reached for the doorknob, paused, looked at her over his shoulder, and for a split second his eyes softened. A silent reassurance. "I've got you." Then he twisted the knob and shoved the door wide. The room was dark, the curtains drawn, but even in the dim light they both saw it. The figure froze mid-step, tall, hooded, his back partially turned toward them. Time seemed to fracture. Clara gasped. Her neighbor lunged forward without hesitation. But the intruder bolted, slipping past the bed and toward the fire escape window. The scramble was chaotic. The squeal of shoes on wood, the sharp thud of contact as her neighbor nearly caught the hood, the crash of a lamp toppling to the floor. The intruder shoved the window open and disappeared into the night. Her neighbor cursed under his breath and vaulted halfway out after him. But it was too late. By the time he reached the ledge, the figure was gone, swallowed by the shadows below. The silence that followed was deafening. Clara stood frozen in the doorway, umbrella limp in her grip, her whole body shaking. Her neighbor climbed back in, breath ragged. He slammed the window shut and pulled the curtains across. Then he turned to her. "Now you believe me." It wasn't a question. His tone was grim, almost weary. Clara's knees buckled, and she sank onto the edge of the bed, tears burning her eyes. "Who was that? Why me?" Her neighbor crouched in front of her, meeting her gaze. For the first time, she saw the raw intensity in his eyes. Not just fear, but something more complicated. Determination, guilt. "You're not imagining this," he said softly. "Someone's been watching you. For weeks. I've seen him. That's why I never look away. Not because of you, because of him." Her chest tightened at his words. The truth was both a relief and a new terror. All this time, she had thought his gaze was invasive, suffocating. But it had been protective. She let out a shaky breath, the umbrella clattering to the floor. "But why me?" she whispered again. He looked down, jaw tight. For a moment, he didn't answer. Then finally, "Because you don't know who you've let into your life." Her heart stumbled. "What are you talking about?" But before he could explain, a loud bang reverberated from somewhere below, the sound of a door slamming in the stairwell. Her neighbor's head snapped up, eyes narrowing. "They're not done," he muttered. Clara's blood turned to ice. The echo of footsteps climbed from the floor below, steady and deliberate. Whoever had broken in wasn't gone. They were still inside the building. And this time, they weren't running away. They were coming closer. The sound of footsteps in the stairwell was no longer distant. They were climbing, steady, purposeful. Clara pressed her back against the cold wall, her breath shallow and rapid. Every creak of the steps sent a jolt through her spine. Her neighbor, still crouched near the window from where the intruder had fled, stiffened. His head tilted slightly, listening. He stood slowly, his entire posture changing from tense watchfulness to sharp, predatory alertness. "They're coming," he murmured. The words chilled her more than the sound itself. Clara's pulse hammered so loudly she swore the intruder, no intruders, could hear it through the walls. "What do we do?" His gaze snapped to hers, urgent but controlled. "We don't wait. We move." "Move?" she repeated, stunned. "Where?" "There." He cut her off, gripping her wrist firmly but not cruelly. His hand was warm, solid, grounding despite the chaos in her head. "Trust me. Staying here means cornered. You don't want that. Trust me." He kept saying it. But did she dare? The footsteps grew louder. Whoever it was had reached the next floor. Hers was only one above. Her stomach lurched. He tugged gently on her wrist. "Come on." Against every instinct to curl up and hide, she let herself be pulled from the bedroom. Her legs trembled, but she forced them forward, through the hallway and into the living room. He stopped at the door, ear pressed to the wood. The footsteps echoed just below now on the landing. He cursed under his breath, then turned to her. "Do you trust me enough to keep quiet?" Her throat was dry. She nodded anyway. Without another word, he pulled her toward the kitchen. He opened a tall cabinet, empty except for cleaning supplies shoved to the side. It was narrow, claustrophobic, but deep enough for one person to wedge inside. Clara's eyes widened. "You can't be serious. Get in," he ordered, though his tone wasn't unkind. It was urgent, commanding. She hesitated, heart thrashing. Was this protection or a trap? If she climbed in, he could lock her away, leave her, deliver her straight to whoever was hunting her. But the footsteps, God, they were on her floor now. The decision ripped through her chest. Clara squeezed inside, the smell of bleach sharp against her nose. He crouched and pressed a finger to his lips. Then, to her surprise, he shut the door most of the way but didn't latch it completely. A thin line of hallway light filtered through. From her vantage, she could see only a sliver. His shadow outside the cabinet, tense, waiting. The footsteps stopped. Her blood froze. A long silence. Then tap, tap, tap. Someone rapped softly against her apartment door. 3 knocks. Patient. Almost playful. Her neighbor didn't move. He stood like a statue, breath silent, waiting. The knock came again, louder this time. Then a voice. A low, muffled murmur through the door. "Clara." Her lungs seized. Whoever it was knew her name. "Clara." The voice repeated, sing-song now, like a taunt. "I see you." Her nails dug into her palms. Every instinct screamed to bolt from the cabinet, to scream, to fight. But fear rooted her in place. Her neighbor finally moved, inching toward the door. He didn't open it, only leaned close, as if gauging the voice. The stranger outside chuckled, a sound that slithered into the apartment. "Don't be shy. You left your window open for so long. I only want to talk." Clara's eyes burned with tears. The note, the call, the shadow, now the voice, all of it real. Her neighbor's shadow shifted, and she caught the glint of something metallic in his hand. A small knife. Her stomach turned. Why did he have that? Was it for the intruder or for her? The knocks grew more insistent, shaking the frame. "Clara, don't make me break the door." She flinched. Her neighbor's voice cut through the tension, calm but deadly. "Try it." Silence. Then the footsteps retreated, slow at first, then fading down the stairwell. Clara's chest loosened just enough for a sob to escape her throat. She clapped a hand over her mouth, muffling it. Her neighbor waited another 30 seconds, then finally opened the cabinet. Clara stumbled out, knees weak. Her entire body shook, and she nearly collapsed against the counter. "They're not gone," he said grimly. "That was a warning." Clara's hands trembled. "Who are they? Why are they after me?" He looked at her, jaw clenched, as though weighing how much truth she could handle. "Not here. Walls have ears. But you can't stay alone tonight. Either you come with me," his gaze darkened, "or you call someone you trust. Someone who won't doubt you." Her chest ached. She wanted to believe him, But Denise's voice rang in her head again. What if he's the one messing with you? The knife in his hand gleamed under the kitchen light. Trust him or run. Her mind spiraled. If she went with him, she might be safer. Or she might be walking into the arms of the enemy. If she stayed here, she'd be alone. Vulnerable. No good choice. Only danger. Clara wiped her tears roughly. If I go with you, how do I know you're not the reason this is happening? His eyes locked on hers, steady, unwavering. Because if I wanted you hurt. He took a slow step closer, lowering the knife to the counter. It would have happened already. Her throat closed. He was right. He'd had 100 chances. And yet, doubt lingered, gnawing at the edges of her mind. A sudden vibration buzzed against the countertop. Clara's phone. A text lit up the screen from an unknown number. It read, "Don't trust him. He's lying to you." The phone buzzed again in the silence. Clara's trembling hand snatched it off the counter, the glow illuminating her pale face. Her eyes darted across the words, reading them over and over as if repetition might change them. Don't trust him. He's lying to you. Her heart sank into her stomach. She looked up. Her neighbor stood a few feet away, watching her carefully, his knife now resting on the countertop where he'd placed it. His expression was unreadable. Too calm, too composed, as though he knew exactly what the message said without needing to see it. Clara swallowed hard. Her mouth was dry. "Who texted you?" he asked, voice low. She clutched the phone tighter, her knuckles white. I don't know." A beat of silence stretched between them. The apartment felt suffocating, the walls pressing in. Finally, she found her voice. "Was it you?" His brow furrowed, genuine confusion flashing across his face. "Why would I warn you against myself? Because maybe you're playing both sides," she snapped, her voice trembling with anger and fear. "Maybe you've been orchestrating this, making me feel watched, making me doubt myself so you can swoop in and be the hero." Her words cut the air like shards of glass. He flinched almost imperceptibly, his jaw tightening. But he didn't raise his voice. Instead, he stepped closer, too close, and held out his empty hands, palms up. "Clara, look at me. If I wanted you to be afraid of me, I wouldn't have chased the intruder. I wouldn't have stood outside your window every night, making sure you were safe. I wouldn't be here now." She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to. But the text burned in her vision, an ugly seed of doubt taking root. "What if you're both working together?" she whispered. "What if this is all just a game to you?" For the first time since she had met him, something broke in his expression. Not anger, not frustration, but hurt. "You think I'd put you through this for fun?" His voice was raw, stripped bare. "You think I don't know what it's like to be stalked? To be hunted?" Clara froze. The weight of his words lingered, heavy, unfinished. But before she could ask, another sound cut through the room. Sharp, metallic. The front doorknob rattled violently. Her heart lurched into her throat. The neighbor snapped back into action instantly. He grabbed the knife off the counter and pressed a finger to his lips, motioning for her to stay back. His body shifted toward the door, shoulders squared. The rattle turned into pounding. "Clara!" The same taunting voice as before, loud now, echoing through the thin door. "You can't hide behind him forever." Her blood iced over. They knew about him. Whoever they were, they knew he was here. Her neighbor stepped closer to the door, his grip tight on the knife. Clara stood frozen in the kitchen, torn between fear of the figure outside and fear of the man inside. Her phone buzzed again in her hand. Another text. "He's not who you think he is. Get away before it's too late." She gasped, nearly dropping the phone. Her eyes flew to her neighbors. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice breaking. The pounding at the door grew louder, more frantic. The intruder outside snarled her name again. Her neighbor turned back to her, his face taut, his eyes fierce. "I'm the only one keeping you alive." The doorframe cracked under the pressure of the pounding. Wood splintered. Whoever was outside was about to break in. Clara's phone buzzed once more. She glanced at the screen, her stomach dropping at the message. If you open that door, you'll never walk out again. And this time, she couldn't tell which danger it meant, him or the one trying to get in. If your heart's racing right now, hit the subscribe button. It tells me you want more stories like this. The pounding at the door grew savage, each slam rattling through the apartment like a thunderclap. Clara's pulse thundered in her ears. She clutched her phone so tightly her fingers ached. Her eyes flicking between the door that was moments from splintering and the man standing in her kitchen. Her neighbor, calm, steady, knife in hand, looked like both her savior and her executioner. "Stay behind me," he ordered, his voice sharp, decisive. The command made her freeze. Something about his tone, firm, unquestionable, sent a jolt through her. She wasn't sure if it was safety or control. The door frame cracked with a loud snap. "Clara!" The voice on the other side was jagged, mocking. "You've made this too easy." Her stomach twisted. That voice didn't sound random. It sounded personal, familiar even, but her mind couldn't place it through the haze of terror. Then crash. The door burst open, with splintering across the floor. A figure stormed inside, masked in black, his gloved hands clenched around something metallic. Crowbar. Clara screamed and stumbled back. Her neighbor lunged forward, placing himself between her and the intruder, knife raised. The intruder stopped dead, his head tilting toward the neighbor. A low laugh slipped from behind the mask. "So it's true. You've been playing the hero." The neighbor's jaw tightened. "Get out." "Or what?" The masked figure swung the crowbar lazily, its weight heavy in his grip. "You'll finally finish what you started?" Clara's breath caught. "Finish what you started?" She turned sharply to her neighbor. "What is he talking about?" He didn't answer. His eyes stayed locked on the intruder, his whole body coiled like a spring. The intruder stepped forward, voice thick with venom. "She doesn't know, does she? You didn't tell her why you moved into this building. Why you've been watching her night after night." Clara's throat went dry. "What does he mean?" The neighbor finally looked at her, his expression torn between fury and something softer. Regret. "It's not what you think," he said quickly. The intruder laughed again, cruel and unhurried. "Oh, Clara, poor Clara. He's not your protector. He's the reason you're in this mess at all." Her chest constricted, panic squeezing her lungs. No, you're lying." The intruder's mask turned toward her, his tone dripping with satisfaction. "Ask him what happened to the last woman he swore to protect." The words hit Clara like ice water. She stumbled back, shaking her head. "Tell me he's lying, please." Her neighbor's grip tightened on the knife, his face twisted with something close to anguish. "This isn't the time, Clara. It's exactly the time," she shouted, her voice cracking. The intruder stepped closer, his crowbar dragging along the wall with a screech. "He's dangerous, more dangerous than me." Her phone buzzed again in her hand. Another text. Her vision blurred as she read it. "Run. Neither of them are safe." Her blood turned to ice. She looked up, caught between two shadows, the neighbor with his knife, the intruder with his crowbar. Her body screamed at her to move, to do something, but fear rooted her in place. The neighbor shifted slightly, knife raised. "Stay back," he growled at the intruder. But the masked man just chuckled. "Funny, you don't get to play the hero anymore." And then he lunged. The two men collided violently in the narrow space, the sound of metal against steel filling the room. The knife slashed, the crowbar swung, and Clara's world turned into chaos. She pressed herself against the wall, her phone clattering to the floor as her trembling hands tried to shield her head. The fight raged. Furniture knocked over, glass shattering, the neighbor grunting with effort, the intruder laughing through his mask. "Stop!" she screamed, her voice raw. "Please stop!" But neither of them listened. The knife slashed across the intruder's arm. He roared in pain but swung harder, the crowbar slamming into the neighbor's shoulder with a sickening crack. The neighbor staggered but didn't fall. Clara's eyes darted to the front door, wide open now. Freedom. Escape. Her instincts screamed, Run! But her feet wouldn't move. Something tethered her there. The fear of turning her back, the terror of not knowing which man was worse, and the nagging thought that if she ran, she might never know the truth. The intruder shoved the neighbor back hard, sending him crashing into the table. His knife clattered to the floor, skidding to Clara's feet. She stared at it, frozen. The intruder's masked head turned toward her. "Pick it up." Her breath hitched. "Pick it up, Clara," he taunted, "or he'll kill you the second I'm gone." The neighbor's voice was hoarse, pained. "Don't listen to him. Give me the knife." Her hands shook violently as she crouched down, fingers hovering over the blade. Both men watching, both waiting. Her phone buzzed again on the floor beside her, the glow of a new message catching her eye. She flicked her gaze to the screen. "Choose wisely. Only one of them wants you alive." Her vision swam, her chest heaved, her trembling hand closed around the knife. Both men shouted her name at once. Clara stood slowly, knife in hand, her eyes darting between them, her heart hammering loud enough to drown everything else out. For the first time since it all began, the decision was hers. The intruder lunged again, the neighbor stumbled forward, and Clara lifted the knife, frozen between two choices that could either save her or seal her fate. If you were Clara, who would you trust? The masked intruder or the neighbor? Drop your answer in the comments. I need to know. The knife felt heavy in Clara's trembling hand. Not just its weight, but the meaning behind it. Two men, two threats, one weapon. Her neighbor staggered, blood seeping through his shirt from the crowbar strike, his eyes desperate but locked on hers. "Clara, trust me. Please." The masked intruder laughed, his voice jagged and amused. "Trust him? That's rich. He's the reason you're in danger at all. You don't even know who you're living next to." Her chest constricted. Her mind was a storm. I don't know who to believe. The intruder lunged first, crowbar raised high, aiming for her neighbor's skull. Without thinking, Clara screamed and surged forward. The knife slashed through the air, connecting with flesh. The intruder howled, clutching his side where blood now bloomed through his dark clothes. His crowbar clattered to the floor, and he staggered back toward the broken doorframe. For a heartbeat, silence filled the room, broken only by Clara's ragged breaths. Her neighbor stood frozen, staring at her, his chest heaving. You stabbed him," he whispered, disbelief flickering in his eyes. Clara's hand shook violently, the knife slick with blood. She didn't know whether to drop it or hold tighter. "He was going to kill you." The intruder's laughter bubbled up through his pain, chilling the room. "Kill him? Oh, Clara, I wasn't here for him." Her stomach twisted violently. "Then who?" "You." His voice was low, guttural, but steady. "You're the loose end." The neighbor lunged forward, shoving Clara behind him as the intruder staggered toward them again. One hand pressed to his bleeding side, the other fumbling for the crowbar. They collided hard. The neighbor wrestled the crowbar from his grip, slamming it across his face. The masked figure collapsed against the wall, groaning. Clara stared, numb. Her heart screamed at her to run, to escape this nightmare, but her legs wouldn't move. The neighbor turned to her, urgency burning in his eyes. "We don't have much time. He won't stay down long." Her voice cracked. "What is happening? Who is he? Why is this happening to me?" The neighbor hesitated, his jaw tight. "You deserve the truth, but not here, not now." He grabbed her wrist, pulling her toward the door. "We have to go." She resisted, digging her heels into the floor. "No, not until you tell me." His eyes softened, even in the chaos. "Clara, I'm not your enemy. I swear it. Everything I've done, everything you've seen, it was to protect you. But I can't protect you if you stay here." The masked intruder groaned behind them, trying to rise. Her neighbor's grip on her wrist tightened. "We have to move now." She let him pull her, her mind spinning, questions clawing at her throat. They stumbled down the stairwell, her bare feet slapping against the cold concrete steps. Her neighbor moved with surprising speed despite his injury, half dragging, half guiding her through the shadows of the dimly lit building. When they burst into the back alley, the night air hit her like a slap. She gasped, pulling her arm free. "Stop! Stop! I'm not going anywhere until you tell me what's going on." He spun around, his chest heaving, his eyes wild. For a moment, she thought he might finally tell her everything. Then he froze. His gaze lifted over her shoulder. Clara turned slowly. A second figure stood at the end of the alley. Another mask. Another shadow. Her knees nearly buckled. "There's more." The new figure tilted his head. "Daniel." His voice was colder, sharper. "You've interfered enough." Her heart dropped. Daniel. Her neighbor. The name she had never dared to say out loud until now. Daniel stepped in front of her, knife raised once again. His voice was a low growl. "You're not touching her." The masked man chuckled darkly. "Still playing the guardian? Haven't you learned? She'll never forgive you once she knows the truth." Clara's throat tightened. "What truth?" Daniel didn't answer. His shoulders stiffened. The masked man stepped forward, his presence suffocating. "Tell her, Daniel. Tell her why she's in danger. Tell her who you really are." Clara's eyes darted between them, her stomach nodding. "Daniel, please, just tell me." He glanced back at her, his face pale, his expression pained. "I can't. Not here." "Yes, here," she shouted, tears stinging her eyes. "You dragged me out of my home. You've been watching me for weeks. Strangers are breaking in to kill me. And now there's two of them? You owe me the truth." For a moment, Daniel looked like he might shatter. Finally, he spoke, his voice low, raw. "They're not strangers, Clara. They're connected to me, to my past. And because of me, you're their target." Her heart stopped. The masked man's laughter echoed off the alley walls. "There it is. The confession." Clara stumbled back, shaking her head. No, you're lying. You..." She pointed at Daniel, her vision blurred by tears. "You said you were protecting me." "I am." Daniel's voice cracked with desperation. "Everything I've done, every night I watched your window, every time I didn't sleep, it was to keep them from reaching you. But they found a way in. And it's my fault." Clara's chest heaved, her body torn between wanting to collapse and wanting to scream. The masked man raised a gun, its barrel glinting in the dim streetlight. "Enough talk. Hand her over, Daniel. You can't fight us all." Daniel's body went rigid. Slowly, he spread his arms, placing himself fully between Clara and the gun. "Over my dead body." Her stomach twisted violently. The masked man sneered. "That can be arranged." The alley erupted into chaos. Daniel charged forward, his knife flashing. The masked man fired, bang. The sound split the night. Clara screamed, dropping to the ground, her hands over her head. For a heartbeat, silence. Then the sound of a struggle, grunts, fists connecting, the knife clattering to the ground, the gun sliding across the pavement. Clara crawled toward the gun, her breath ragged, her whole body shaking. She stretched her trembling hand forward, fingers brushing cold metal, when a boot came down hard, pinning it in place. She looked up. The first masked intruder, the one she had stabbed. His mask smeared with blood, his body weak but still alive. He leaned down, his voice low and venomous. "I told you, Clara. He's the reason you'll die tonight." Her scream tore through the night. Daniel wrestles desperately with the second masked man, blood already staining his shirt, while the first intruder pins Clara to the ground, his hand wrapping around her throat. She's caught between life, death, and a truth she still doesn't fully understand. Clara's back pressed hard against the alley's damp concrete, her breath sputtering beneath the weight of the masked intruder's hand around her throat. His grip was iron, cutting off air, his bloodied mask inches from her face. Her fingers clawed at his wrist, her lungs screaming for oxygen. The world blurred at the edges, her heartbeat a frantic drum in her skull. "Look at him," the intruder hissed, forcing her head to the side. Through hazy vision, Clara saw Daniel locked in brutal combat with the second masked man. The knife and gun had both been kicked away, leaving them to fight barehanded. Fists, elbows, knees, anything. Daniel's face was a mask of fury, his movements fueled by desperation. The intruder pressed harder, his voice low, vicious. "That man you trust, he's the reason we're here. He used to be one of us. He betrayed us. And now you're the price." Her eyes widened. Betrayal? One of them? She tried to shake her head, to deny it, but the pressure on her throat made every attempt at movement impossible. Daniel slammed the second masked man against the wall, blood streaking the bricks. He shouted, voice hoarse and wild, "Clara, don't listen to him." But the words barely reached her. Her vision darkened. Her limbs weakened. The intruder leaned closer, his breath hot and rancid against her ear. "He's the reason your life's ending tonight. He marked you the moment he chose you." Rage sparked in Clara's fading consciousness. Her hand fumbled against the ground, brushing against a shard of broken glass. With the last of her strength, she gripped it and slashed upward. The glass cut across the intruder's arm. He bellowed, jerking back, his hand loosening just enough for Clara to gasp for air. She shoved against him, rolling to the side, coughing violently, lungs burning. Daniel roared and broke free from his opponent, charging at the man who had nearly strangled Clara. He tackled him hard, fists raining down in a frenzy. The second masked man staggered forward, spitting blood, retrieving the discarded gun from the ground. His voice was ragged but firm. "Daniel, enough. You can't save her. You were one of us. You know how this ends." Clara's entire body froze. "One of us." The words clawed at her mind. She turned slowly, her gaze locking onto Daniel. "What does he mean? Daniel, what does he mean?" Daniel froze mid-strike, his fists bloody, his chest heaving. For a moment, he looked like a man caught between two cages, guilt and survival. The intruder beneath him laughed, blood in his teeth. "Tell her, Daniel. Tell her what you used to do. Tell her why you know exactly how to protect her. Because you're not a neighbor. You're a ghost from the same darkness we come from." Her hands shook violently, her voice breaking. "Daniel, please, tell me it's not true." He looked at her then, really looked at her, as if this was the moment he dreaded all along. His voice cracked. "It is true." Her stomach dropped. The world tilted. Daniel rose slowly, his body trembling, his eyes shining with something raw and broken. "I used to be one of them. Years ago. I was their lookout, their planner. I watched people, studied them, just like I watched you. But I left. I ran. I couldn't stomach what they did anymore. I swore I'd never be part of it again." Clara shook her head violently. "And now what? You're saying I'm paying the price for your sins?" Daniel's voice broke. "Yes, because I ran. They see me as a traitor. And to punish me, they go after the one person I care about most." Her chest caved. "Care about?" The word felt poisoned. "You don't even know me." His eyes glistened with tears he didn't wipe away. "I know enough. I know you hum when you're nervous. I know you make tea before bed even though you never drink it all. I know you read the same books over and over because you don't want to say goodbye to the characters. I know you're the only light I've had in years." Her throat tightened painfully. Was this love or obsession? The masked man with the gun chuckled darkly. "See, Clara? He's no hero. He's just another monster who picked you as his redemption story." Daniel spun, rage igniting. "Shut up." He lunged forward. The gun fired. Bang. Daniel stumbled, a red bloom spreading across his side. He dropped to his knees, clutching the wound. Clara screamed, her hands flying to her mouth. The gunman raised the weapon again, aiming for Daniel's head. Traitors die first. She's next. Something inside Clara snapped. Pure instinct, raw and blinding. She lunged for the fallen crowbar, swinging with every ounce of fear and fury inside her. The metal connected with the gunman's wrist, sending the weapon flying. He howled in pain. Daniel, bleeding and shaking, surged forward, tackling him again. They crashed into the wall, fists flying, blood spattering. The first intruder, the one she'd stabbed, staggered back into the fray. His mask hung crooked, revealing a scarred jaw. He lunged at Clara, fury twisting his features. She swung the crowbar again, this time with more control. Connected with his ribs. He doubled over, gasping, but his eyes still blazed. Daniel groaned, collapsing under the second attacker's fists. The man straddled him, choking him brutally, snarling, "This ends tonight, brother." Clara's chest heaved. Daniel's face was turning blue beneath the chokehold. She raised the crowbar, her arms shaking violently. Her mind screamed, "Do it. Save him. Even if he lied. Even if he's dangerous. Save him." With a guttural cry, she brought the crowbar down. The crack of bone echoed. The masked man crumpled. Daniel coughed violently, rolling free, blood pouring from his wounds. The first attacker groaned, stumbling toward Clara again, his eyes wild. "You'll regret this." Daniel's hand shot out, gripping the knife from the ground. With the last of his strength, he hurled it. The blade buried itself deep in the attacker's chest. He collapsed, eyes wide in shock, then still. Silence. Only their ragged breathing remained. Clara dropped the crowbar, her hands shaking uncontrollably, her body swaying. Daniel crawled toward her, his face pale, his body weak. "Clara, I'm sorry. I never wanted you in this. Never wanted you to know. But if I had to die tonight, I wanted you to at least know. It was love. Always love." Her eyes blurred with tears. She couldn't tell if they were for him, for herself, or for the life that had just been torn apart. His hand slipped from hers. His body went limp. Clara screamed his name, shaking him desperately. But Daniel didn't move. The night around her felt impossibly quiet. And Clara realized, whether he was hero or villain, guardian or monster, she had just lost the only person who had ever truly seen her. Sirens blared faintly in the distance, drawing closer. Clara sat in the blood-soaked alley, Daniel's head in her lap, torn between betrayal and love, between horror and grief. And in that moment, she knew nothing about her life would ever be the same again. The wail of sirens grew louder, bouncing off the alley walls, a ghostly choir closing in. Clara sat in the filth and blood, Daniel's head in her lap, her hands shaking as she pressed them against his wound. His blood was hot, sticky, soaking her clothes, her skin, her soul. "Stay with me," she whispered, over and over. "Please, Daniel, stay with me." His eyes fluttered open, glassy with pain. He managed a faint, broken smile. "You called me, Daniel." Her throat tightened. She hadn't even realized it. The name felt too intimate, too dangerous. But in that moment, it was all she had. "You're not dying," she said firmly, though her tears betrayed her. "Not after everything. Not after—" Her words caught. "Not after you watched me all this time." His breath hitched. "Watched you, because I couldn't stop. You were my reason." Her hands pressed harder. "Then stay, please." The sirens screeched closer. Flashing blue and red lights spilled into the alley, painting their broken forms in cold fire. Voices shouted. Boots thundered. Clara's world blurred into chaos. Officers swarmed the alley, weapons raised, commands echoing. The two masked men, one dead, one unconscious, were yanked away. Clara barely registered it. Her entire focus clung to the fading warmth in her lap. Paramedics knelt beside her, pulling Daniel from her arms. She screamed, tried to hold on to him, but they pried her hands free, promising he wasn't gone yet. Her fingers, slick with blood, curled uselessly against her chest as they loaded him onto the stretcher. His eyes flickered toward her once, barely open, lips moving silently. She thought she saw the word love, and then he was gone, swallowed into the ambulance. The hours that followed blurred. Questions, police lights, statements. Clara sat in a sterile room, a blanket draped over her shoulders, though she still shivered violently. "Miss, are you sure you never saw these men before?" One officer pressed. She shook her head numbly. "No, I didn't." "And this neighbor, Daniel, you didn't know him personally?" Her lips parted, then closed. What could she say? That she only knew him through a window? That she only learned his name because men in masks had tried to kill her? That he claimed to love her? That she wasn't sure if she hated him or needed him? She whispered, "No, not really." The officer scribbled something, unconvinced. Clara stared at her blood-stained hands. Not really. And yet she knew him more deeply than anyone else in her life. The way he watched, the way he carried his guilt, the way his eyes burned like a man desperate for redemption. Was that knowing someone or being fooled by them? Days later, Clara returned to her apartment. The front door was splintered, the floor stained, the air thick with a memory she couldn't scrub away. She walked numbly through the space, her mind replaying it all. The notes, the window, the shadow in her room, Daniel bursting through her door. The moment she chose him over and over again. Her gaze drifted toward the window. The curtains fluttered faintly with the night breeze. She hesitated. Then, slowly, she pulled them aside. The opposite window was empty. No lamplight, no figure. Her chest ached. The absence felt louder than any noise. For nights on end, she still looked. Habit, hope, fear. She didn't know which, but Daniel never appeared. Weeks later, she found herself outside a hospital. She hadn't been told if he survived. The police had been vague, distant. Part of her wanted closure. Part of her dreaded it. Her feet carried her inside before her mind could stop her. The receptionist scanned the list, then frowned. Daniel Whitlock? He's no longer here. Clara's heart seized. No longer here? You mean? The woman hesitated. Transferred. Protective custody. That's all I can say. Protective custody. The words rattled in Clara's chest. He was alive. Alive but gone. She walked out, the city buzzing around her, her hands trembling. Alive, but unreachable. That night, Clara sat at her window again, staring at the darkness across the alley. Her chest tightened with the weight of everything unsaid. She whispered softly into the void. I don't know if you're a hero or a monster, but I know you loved me, and I think in some twisted way, I loved you too. The night swallowed her words, and in the faintest flicker, from a distance she couldn't place, she thought she saw a single light turn on. Love isn't always sweet. Sometimes it's dangerous. If you felt this story, subscribe now, because the next one might just keep you up tonight.